Hi. If you're joining me, you might have watched my last video where I played Home. In the last three videos, I played three songs off of the February album, Writing Month album, which is untitled, so it's going to have that long, drawn out name. But yeah, so this is a song that this is an album I'm writing for February album Writing Month. This is just a event that helps songwriters force themselves to write, like with no expectation of like the song's got to be perfect or anything like that. It's literally put pen to paper or fingers to keyboard and just see what happens. So these last three albums, they got put like really got a lot of movement because when I write, I literally will put myself in a situation where I have nothing else to do but write. So I do a lot of my writing at work. I do a lot of my writing home alone, but I'll turn off every device. I don't. I most of the time don't write with any other music playing, but sometimes I'll put on instrumental music if I want to if I need to put myself in the mindset of being like in music. Sometimes when I don't write, or sometimes I'll just end up writing a poem or something like that. But as long as I'm like submit myself to not be listening to any other music, not listening to any podcasts or anything like that. Just be in the moment, be writing. A lot of people achieve that by doing collaborations. I have not had the opportunity to do a collaboration in a while. The closest I've done is talking to other people who do music, and sometimes that'll inspire some writing or anything like that. I did write a couple songs while in a jam session with a band when I was auditioning for them, but they weren't the best songs because I was trying to impress people, and I feel like that's when I write my worst. When I write my best is when I'm like just being like, okay, I'm gonna write. I have these things I gotta get off my chest or something like that when I'm writing for myself, and that's what I did with these last these songs. So let's start with Home because that's the one I have pulled up right now. Home, like I said, is a song about traveling and how traveling it doesn't always bring up the best feelings for me. But luckily I have a wonderful wife. And when we travel, it's very much traveling for fun. And that's something I never got to do when I was a kid. So I wrote a song about how my home was basically the road. Like I couldn't make friends. I made friends, like friends happen whether you want to or not, but I couldn't really trust that they were going to be forever friends because I wasn't going to be there forever. I knew that as soon as like 2-3 years into living in a place, I was going to move, and that was my life. A lot of people think it's that I was a military kid or something like that. Nah, I just grew up poor, and my family liked to just pick up somewhere else and hope that it does better that time. But yeah, so I've learned now with my wonderful wife that home is not your physical location. It's the people you put in your family. The love you choose, to quote a song that is also I'm also working on that isn't tied to this album project. But yeah, you choose the love you surround yourself with, and that becomes your home. Very cheesy, I know, but you know, sometime an emo guy's got to cheese. So let's move to the next song. The next song I'm going to talk about. Talking about the writing process for that. The writing process was very literally. I need to write a song, so I sat down and I just penned it out. Started thinking about. I often don't write with an instrument. Like sometimes when I have an instrument out, like I'll add something to it when I'm working on it. But often I write without any instrument, without any like backing track, as it were, to force myself to write in a key that I would normally not write in. Because if I have an instrument, I'm going to be playing in the same key I always write in, which is like an A minor, E minor, something like that key. A lot of like E minor, C, G action. And I still kind of end up in that vein because that's where my ear is basically. Um, but yeah, I write without any without an instrument, and then when I sit down to actually work out the chords, then I'll break out an instrument. I won't try to do that by ear. Um, but yeah, it often helps me to write in a different way because if I hear a backing track, I'm often going to fall into a more folky, like old classic folk rock type sound, which isn't the worst sound, but it's not always what I want to go for. So I want to try to write differently. The next song is Blur and Shadow. This is a song that actually started from a line. It wasn't originally going to be what it ended up being, but literally I thought of the line Blur and Shadow, and there's a gap in the memory in the shape of you. Um, and it like originally wasn't inspired by like it didn't come from anywhere. Just kind of like that line popped into my head, and I was like, okay, so what is a blur and shadow? Like, what does that even mean? Like, it's and I was like, okay, it's an obscured, like it's a person who's obscured beyond all recognition, to where it's like that image that like no longer is like when you're late at night and you see a silhouette of a thing that you're like it doesn't even resemble what it is anymore. It's just an image. It's just a silhouette, like meaningless. And I was like, that's interesting. And I was the gap in a memory in the shape of you. Um, like I thought about what that meant and what it pertained to a blur and shadow, and I came up with the idea of people you lost, which my family's been going through a lot of loss lately, a lot of deaths in the family, and I was like thinking about that and how it like affected me and everything like that, and I was like, all right, so it's a person you lost who you don't remember anymore, which is an interesting feeling because you're like you think it would be a good feeling because you don't grieve them anymore, but you have a different grief. It's like you grieve the thought that you grieve all the memories you lost, um, which like sits deeper and more real. Um, which like I said in the video of that, it kind of went to where with my grandma, who died after I had already started to forget who she was, because it had been so many years since I had last seen her. And she was always around in my childhood. Like we spent a lot of time with my grandparents until we moved up north and no longer could go to see them, and they moved further west, out to Washington, and it was to a point that I didn't have them in my life anymore in any real way besides like phone calls, which often I didn't even get the phone calls. It was my dad who talked to them while I was at school and then later would recount the conversation. So it was like a memory of a memory. It was like I remembered them through my father remembering them, which is a very different feeling, and it becomes this loose image of a person, hence a blur and shadow. Now enough of that depressingness, and let's move on to the next depressing thing. Good old emo music. Who thought an emo music could be folk? Staring at ceilings. And the blur and shadow writing actually came super quick, which has been nice to be able to write like that again. That used to be how I would write in high school. But it was very much once I got the concept, the words kind of poured out onto the page. It was pretty much. It's always the second verse that catches me though. So the second verse took a little more pounding at the wall to try to get to it, to where I wanted it. But eventually I did get there. Now, Staring at the Ceilings is a song I wrote today. And I wrote the part, like it started as most things do with the staring at a ceiling, the pills are for naught. The first line. It really did start with I'm staring at ceilings. And it was really because one of my favorite songs I wrote when I was a kid, I was in high school, but a kid. I wrote a song called think it was the TikTok Talk or something like that. It was no, it was just called Insomnia. I didn't have a catchphrase for it. And it was a song literally about insomnia because I was very much going through insomnia from high school to college. And it got really bad in college. But it was that I had been up for like 2 days straight and my mind wasn't really working anymore. And I was like, okay, all I can do at this point is write what's going on in my head and why I can't sleep and all this stuff. So it was a lot about this, the TikTok talk, so the clock that doesn't stop. And like how the clock talks to you. And it was like when I was in high school, in college, all I had was like the knowledge that I had to be up in the morning for different classes. And I'm just like watching the clock and be like, okay, how many hours of sleep do I get now? It's like, I get 5 hours of sleep. I get 4 hours of sleep. I get 3 hours of sleep. I don't sleep. And it was just like that thought of like, you're just counting the time in your head of like, I only have so much sleep I'm going to get. And it just gets worse and worse. I've gotten to the point that I don't check my clock anymore when I'm like having trouble sleeping. Sometimes I'll look at like watch a video or something like that, but I like force myself not to watch the time. But you think that would be bad? It would be like, oh, now you can stay up later because you're not paying attention to time. But it literally makes it easier because I'm not thinking about that anymore. And the song that I wrote now kind of like builds onto the idea of what I was doing, but with more a little consciousness to the writing. There's still a little bit of sleeplessness in the lyrics because I did not sleep well last night, but it's like a lot of the things were pulled by different thoughts I have as being an insomniac. Whereas like no one ever told me about the night spent staring at streetlights. And it's not a literal staring at streetlights. I don't have a window facing the road. That would suck. But it's like that idea of like, you're just staring at the window and looking at whatever interesting thing you can find out there because you're not sleeping, so you might as well do something. So it's the night's just staring at like whatever interesting thing that catches your eye because you trying to get your mind off things. So it talks about staring at streetlights, the ringing in your ears. I've read a lot about different insomniacs deal with ringing, like tinnitus. It's not directly tinnitus. I said tinnitus. But I do deal with a little bit of ringing in my ears sometimes. And it's just like the general like noise around, whether like in like the ringing in your ear or the general noise of like the house creaking and all that stuff. But yeah, it's pretty simple, right? Like ideas that I wanted to push to something a little more, which I always talk to my wife about, how a lot of my stories are tied to these simple ideas that I just push to the next level. So Overboard and Underwater is a broken relationship, and I wrote it into this whole self-destructive antagonist. The main character of the story is this self-destructive individual leading a relationship that he knows is going to be destructive to the woman the woman in the relationship. I think I made sure it was a lady put it as a lady in the relationship. Anyways, the other partner on the ship with the captain, like that self-destructive relationship, or that co-destructive relationship, as it were. And then there was another like LSD, or Lately She's Dreaming. I wanted to write a song that meant nothing, and because I'm an emo kid and nothing can mean nothing, I wrote this whole song this song that was initially meaningless, but as I wrote it, these two characters kind of started to form about the main character, this guy who is strung out of his head on different drugs, meeting this lady who is insane and not like making any sense, but he's like, I'll follow her around because she's probably got drugs. And that's the whole like thing of like where this guy is literally using this girl for the alcohol, um, and it's a lot of. I think it's the line I put in the song is self destruction is better with friends because you could find someone a little frayed when you find someone a little frayed at the end, um, and it's I like doing that. I like taking these ideas that should be simple and blowing them up. And I worry about how people listening might think I have like this dark, dreary past full of like drug abuse and everything like that, which I'm no drug abuse in my history. But I like those stories being told. I hope that doesn't upset people that I'm not telling my own stories part of the time. Um, but I'm a story like I'm a storyteller as much as a songwriter, um, and hopefully throughout this album process, I'll get to tell more stories that are going to be interesting to people. Um, any comments would be appreciated. I'm curious. Do people want me to on this album to keep it just me and a guitar, or would you like me to play around with synths or digital instruments or anything like that? Leave a comment below, like, subscribe, um, ring that bell, as it were, and all that shit. Anyways, thank you, and thank you for coming on this February album writing month journey with me. Hopefully, I can do more updates, and hopefully, they'll become more cohesive and have some semblance of a structure as this goes on. This is new for me, so yeah. Thank you for listening. Maybe next time I'll record with a microphone. I just have to learn how to edit videos because that's something I've never had to do before. Peace.